Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. And you guys know this is my special time that I like to first take this precious moment and welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive: time, that commodity that many of us have misused and do not understand truly the value of our 24 hours. Each one of us have 24 hours, so we cannot complain. I love that. And the other is the journey housed who we were and made us who we are today. And we are honored to have Walt come and spend both of these precious commodities with us so that we can have a chance to engage with his wisdom, his knowledge, his pain, and who he is. And we thank you so much, Walt, for coming and sharing with us here at Threads of Enlightenment.
Yeah, Ken, thank you so much for allowing me to be a thread woven into the tapestry of your audience. And I would share with your audience that this conversation between you and I began even before this podcast. And I feel so welcomed by you and so excited by the work that you're doing. And I'm just really grateful to be a part of it. And I'm excited for this conversation that we've already started to continue as we share it with your audience.
I am definitely, and we did start this conversation before here, and I cannot wait for the audience to get a chance to taste the flavor that I have already experienced. Well, tell the folks about who you are. How do you serve mankind? And I tell people this is the spot that you need to get to in your life to become a servant. How do you serve?
Yeah, starting with where my service is now. Um, I'm an integral coach. That can mean many things, right? I serve humans on their individual leadership journey is how I think of my coaching. Um, I help people find the thing, that area of growth that is most important to them. What is that one thing, that one big thing that if you could do better, you could create more impact through your life. You could be more productive in those places you want to be more productive, where you could be more present, where you could be more fulfilled, where you could be in deeper, more authentic relationships. What's that one thing that would allow for you to do that? And then the work is to illuminate a belief system that gets in the way of that, right? Oh, there it
Yeah.
is. I believe that if this, then that. And we think often that once the belief system is illuminated, like, okay, we're good now. I can see it. I can see the belief system that's getting in my way. But
Yeah.
truly, that's really where the work is beginning. That's actually a painful place because then
Yeah.
you start seeing that belief system everywhere. You know, I believe that if I'm surrounded by harmony, then I'll be secure. Like,
Yeah.
oh, there I am again. I'm
Yeah.
acquiescing, right? I'm accommodating. Oh,
Yeah.
I feel so uncomfortable. And so, that's really the beginning of the journey, is that illumination of that belief system that gets in our way. The work that I join my clients on is really the transcendence of that belief system, creating, rewiring a new
Yeah.
belief system that honors the place where that current belief system serves
Yeah.
my client, and also moving past those places where it limits them so that they have more choice in their life. So that's really the work I do on my one-on-one coaching, right? Just serve
Yeah.
people on that journey to be better, to create more impact through their lives. Um, and then I serve in other ways. I'm in a university town. I'm here at the University of Colorado in
Hmm.
Boulder, Colorado, and I teach a leadership class. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of my time, Ken. I'm not going to lie to you. It takes a lot of time to teach one class.
Yeah.
Um, and I do it because an amazing opportunity to hold space for 30 students for five
Yeah.
months just to explore this idea of leadership. I don't tell them things, I invite them.
Yeah.
I invite them into this exploration to more deeply understand what leadership is and to identify more strongly as leaders who can create positive change through their lives. So I serve at the university in that way. And additionally, I founded a leadership um, coaching program at the university. So I've brought in these like 16 amazing professional coaches that
Hmm.
coach a number of students each semester, and it's free of charge to the students. So those students
Wow.
who are interested in leadership coaching from professionals are able to get 10 hours of leadership coaching um, per semester here at the university. So those are
Wow.
some of the ways that I serve, but it occurs to me nearly everything I do is to meet people where they are in their personal journey and and serve their growth and development in that journey if they are willing for that journey.
Yeah, you have to be, as we stated, you have to be willing because there is a cost. And that cost is, if you look at it, you can look at it a couple of ways. You can look at it as expensive, which it is, but you can also look at it as it's not worth it to do your journey. But that choice is yours. But I can tell you this, in either case, you will change your life. And so just
Yeah.
decide, what do you want in this space right here? And I can't wait for this conversation because you've said so much within that introduction. And so one of our customs here, Walt, is to revisit our first location that we got a chance to just reside for a couple of years there. We call that the family.
Hmm.
And the family is a space by which we are interacting with our parents. We have grandparents, siblings, and so forth. And we are able to learn principles, learn about energetic um, acceptance, boundaries, all of those different
Hmm.
things that we are here in that first space. What was your first visit like when you were residing in that unit we call family?
Yeah. So as I think, as I think about my family and, the first, I guess the first sensation that I encounter is just kind of in my chest. There's a fluttering. There's 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 both warmth and conflict, I
Hmm.
think, is what I experience. I primarily grew up on a small ranch in Oregon.
Yeah.
My both my parents were teachers, educators, but we had this ranch,
Hmm.
this beautiful ranch, and my dad was this extraordinarily productive person, just a hard working human, just constantly developing and creating. Um,
Yeah.
and and so his focus was very much on the doing. What I didn't have the words to articulate or express then is I'm more comfortable in the being than the doing.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of the source of the tension of how
Yeah.
much work I had to do. And people are like, "Oh, you have this amazing foundation of hard work in your childhood." Yes. And I didn't love it the way that everybody might love that. Like there was,
Yeah.
I was up at 5 every morning doing chores. My
Yeah.
weekends, my summers, my breaks were just spent, running livestock, building fence.
Yeah.
It's just always part of it. So there was some conflict around the doing and the being there. And my mom, also a school teacher, I didn't realize, she is truly one of the strongest people I know, just like powerfully strong woman. And I didn't recognize that in my
Yeah.
youth because I didn't yet associate, those qualities she had of kindness and giving and sharing and love as indications of strength. That wasn't part of my awareness yet. And I have a sister. I have one sibling with whom I'm close. She is She's just a few years older than I am. She's also a teacher. So we're all
Yeah.
teachers. Like I teach also, right? It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
who we are. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of the this core unit. And my dad died when I was reasonably young. I was listening to your conversation with Louise recently, and I
Yeah.
was so impacted by her story.
Beautiful
She
woman.
lost, yes,
Yeah.
beautiful,
Yeah.
and the impact of her life by losing
Yeah.
her mother early. And I was 19 when I lost my dad to lung cancer,
Yeah.
and that was certainly an impactful event in my life.
Yeah. And being in that situation, because I think that's looking into it and hearing you navigate back and pull and extract from the history of your family about the teachers and the exposure to knowledge, if you will, about gaining and the value, if you will, of knowledge and studies, and then the hard work and the conflict, as you mentioned with your dad, because I understand that conflict. I grew up on a farm with my granddad, and who I know about that conflict with getting up 5 in the morning and taking care of animals and so forth, and your weekends and all the wonderful things. I understand that. From that um, conflict, um, what did you gain from that rubbing of the relationship with your dad? What did you extract out of that relationship? Later on, we'll, go into some of the things that would affected you. But what did you extract from that relationship with the conflict with your dad?
Yeah, I think that's still evolving.
Yeah,
Now that I think of it, one is, this is somebody that I admired so much, right? He
yeah,
was he was a cowboy, he was productive, he was modeling. For me, I didn't have, we were pretty secluded on the ranch, so I didn't
yeah,
have a lot of other, I had a few important people in my life, but parents are a primary model.
yeah, yeah,
So he was modeling this productivity as kind of the way.
yeah,
And in that, I was less attached to that kind of productivity,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
My talents were less aligned with welding and tearing down
yeah,
tractors and building fence and mechanical work and all these things that he was so adept at and natural at and driven toward. I think by losing, I think that created a little bit of an imbalance, a sense of shame, maybe that I still
yeah,
grapple with, that is not the way that I'm productive. I'm very productive in other ways, important ways, powerful ways.
yeah.
But with me is that nagging doubt of when was the last time I tore down a tractor, right? And rebuilt it. It's been a few decades, right? So that I think I feel that absence of just that physical productivity a little bit.
Yeah,
I think that was, and because I lost my dad when I was 19, we didn't have an opportunity to reconcile that, right? There
yeah,
wasn't an
yeah,
opportunity to reach that adulthood phase where it's like, yeah, where you are is where you're supposed to be. What you're doing is what you were called to do.
yeah,
Everything is okay. So I didn't, ever receive that that reassurance around the
yeah.
path that I've chosen.
Yeah, I think because we all, as I said, that programming that exists from the programmers and how they teach us a man should be, one should not cry, one should be building and tearing down and being able to rebuild an engine in 10 minutes. And if you don't
Yeah.
know how to, you have to know how to frame a house and you got to be manly to do that. And men don't cry and we don't show weaknesses and all of these different teachings and programming that one will begin to deposit into someone. And because we are not built that way, we feel as if we are less than. And so that creates a belief, a perception as we move through life. Here you are, you have uh, able to gain some insights in your life, and you're moving through. You're in high school. Dad and his and mom, their relationship. How did you relate to your the others, if you will, the ones that are outside of family, friends coming around as you're moving through life, heading in that direction towards quote unquote manhood?
Yeah, extremely awkwardly, right?
Yeah,
I didn't feel like I had a sense of belonging where I was. Again, this small town in Oregon, um, is a logging town, right? It
yeah,
was a tough town. Um, there's only 30 people in my class, and we're pretty much together from first grade
yeah,
to 12th grade.
yeah.
Of those 30 people, I think I was the only one that initially went to college.
Wow,
Um, and there's at least six are already dead. I'm
wow.
pretty young, and so
Mhm.
it's a tough place. It can be a violent place.
Yeah,
It can be a place of poor decisions, and and it's this beautiful, remarkable place. It's this
yeah,
so many extraordinary people. The town is called Yoncalla, Yoncalla, less than 1,000 people, Yoncalla, Oregon. And one of my mentors was this extraordinary woman named Dr. Lydia. That I have a daughter named Lydia is not a coincidence. She's named after Dr. Lydia.
yeah.
Dr. Lydia, for example, um, was raised a Mennonite with
Hmm.
11 siblings, all brothers, and she convinced her family somehow to send her to medical school at the University of
Yeah,
Iowa. So she became a doctor, and after she became a doctor, we went into the World War II era, and the
yeah.
U.S. Navy was looking for women doctors,
Hmm.
um, to deploy in the war. So she
Yeah,
signed up for that. So she joined the Navy, right? This Mennonite woman,
yeah,
turned medical doctor, joins the Navy, somehow ends up in Yoncalla, Oregon, and it just set up a practice there,
yeah.
charged a dollar per office visit for patients, $2
Um,
if she didn't drive because she's Mennonite, so two
yeah.
dollars if her husband drove her there,
Hmm.
and she was my Sunday school teacher, and she just fed my intellectual curiosity, just
Yeah,
books upon books upon books that she provided for me. So I say this like this, and there were others like her that didn't belong in this small town, but somehow
yeah.
were there. There's
We're
almost like a
there.
dozen people that were extraordinary, just
Yeah,
unbelievable. Like, how do they end up in this small town, which is also drug addled and desperate and
yeah,
dangerous, and yet both those things existed. But my sense was is that I didn't belong,
yeah,
and I couldn't relate, and I couldn't connect, and I felt like an outsider in the very place where I grew up,
yeah.
and I couldn't wait to get out, so I did get out the first chance I got.
And when you had that opportunity to get out, if you will, at being an outsider in your home and hometown, when you were looking in that direction out, what did you
Yeah.
see and where did you ended up as you are exiting what we call home, if you will?
Yeah. So my timing around it was weird. My dad was battling lung cancer, and I was still anxious to get out of
Yeah,
state, which is kind of funny timing, and it still felt right. to provide
Yeah.
this sense of closure for my parents, empty nest for a little bit of time. So I initially went to Purdue University, and that didn't feel right. So I ended up at the University of Colorado, the very place that I am now. Um, and what enabled me to do that was a Navy scholarship.
Yeah.
So following in Dr. Lydia's footsteps, I achieved, I was given this awarded this scholarship, and it allowed me to go to pretty much any university, get a degree, and then
Yeah.
serve in the Navy. So the Navy was kind of my way out
Yeah.
and my way to
And
university.
and I know you said that reading your information piloting, where did that come
Yes.
from? Where did that
Yeah.
love of that enter in? And if you remember, how did it come about that you were uh, being pulled towards that?
Yeah. So my earliest memory around that was in kindergarten
Yeah.
when Miss Burka, my kindergarten teacher, had us draw what we wanted to be when we grew up. I think a pretty
Yeah.
standard exercise for kindergartners. So I drew a picture of a helicopter and awkwardly worded out, lettered out, I want to be a helicopter pilot. So
Yeah.
I drew that and wrote that when I was 5. That picture still hangs on the wall of my childhood bedroom in Oregon. It's still there. And then I think about, as I was walking the fields, as I was doing the work, and my mind would wander, and I would have my youthful like fantasies around life and excitement and adventure. It seems like there's always a helicopter involved, right? Like I fantasized about
Yeah.
flying helicopters. And so um, I did go on that Navy scholarship. I did graduate from the University of Colorado. I did get commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy, and then went to flight school. And then, when you're in flight school, you are presented with some choices, in so
Yeah.
much as you have a choice at all in the military, of what you want to do. Do you want to fly
Yeah.
helicopters? Do you want to fly jets? Do you want to fly big jumbo things with props?
Yeah.
Most people want to fly jets, right? That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
normal thing. And I was the guy. I just want to fly helicopters. It's who I am. And so that's what I did. And for me, it was the right thing, the right people, the right
Yeah.
place. It provided for me that sense of belonging in the squadron life. At least I'm like, oh, this is where I can be myself. This is where I can do what I love and exhibit my passion, and
Yeah.
be a leader and be excited. And the people were, and it kind of, I don't know what it is about Navy helicopters, but I love the people that the squadrons attract there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I did that. I did that for the next 23 years. I was in the Navy 23 years, designated as a helicopter pilot, and flying for a lot of those off of ships in a lot of different places, and enjoying that life very much.
I hope you guys and the people that come to my podcast, I always stress to them to switch. We start by listening, and that is normal. But then one must switch gradually to become a hearer, because what Walt had just described within that whole series of information is how you get and operate within the spiritual realm. The first thing is to decide what one wants. And we call those things as well when we make those vision board. Here's this young kid creating his vision board. He's now putting on paper. It says in the Bible, I remember reading, it says, write the vision down. This young kid draws this helicopter. I want to be a pilot. He releases what he wants to do. And now he engages another aspect of personal development as one of the most powerful tools you will ever bring into your life after you've written it down, after you've made your decision. The imagination. As a young child, he begins to engage the imagination, not realizing that he is setting in motion all kinds of stuff that will manifest for him years down the road. And when we began to pull those things using the imagination and all of these things, we're sending out energy. He is growing, and that imagination is still a part of him. That desire is still there. And when he gets to the space by which his choice, the decision that he made as a young man, imagining his life and all those things, says, what do you want to do? He says, of course, I've already released it. I want to be a pilot. And so everything that he said, things began to move to create what this young child had started in process in middle school. That's how we create. I mean, it is one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard in how to create and bring things into your life. Started at a young kindergarten person that calls something in existence many years down the road. So here you are, you're there, you're in that calling, that vision, that imagination, you're living there. And you said you've been there for a while and enjoyed it. When did you begin to, as you're there, Walt, and you're moving through your life, you're bringing and growing as a human being, a human spirit, because there's always a shifting within us. There's this undercurrent when there is more to be done. And we began to feel it, that shifting. When you began to feel that undercurrent as there is more to be done, where were you in your life, and what was that thing that was starting to happen around you when that undercurrent begins to bubble up a little?
Yeah, so it's actually quite clear, and but I want to go back and just thank you for your framing of that part of my journey. I actually got a little emotional around that. Like you brought such richness to that kindergarten through flight school through 23 years of military service that that I hadn't quite felt that way before. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. We are
And
creators,
then
Walt. Isn't that powerful what this young kid did, though? I mean, look what this
it is.
kindergarten did from a piece of paper. He knew what was inside, and he expressed it by drawing it. And as he's drawing it, I know his belief is getting stronger with each line, even though it may not look perfect. But in his mind, that was perfection. That was who he wanted, and he created it and called it into existence, even though it took time because he still had to grow to be able to fly it. But he created that sitting in a class with his kindergarten teacher.
Yeah, I want to honor that little guy. That's great.
Yeah.
So what a powerful vision he called into existence, and what a powerful life he created by, especially in that childlike way where anything is possible, right?
Possible,
Especially like we must be so much more open when we're 5 to possibility before we're encumbered by the expectations of this world and of our lives. So, but I will say,
Walt, excuse me, I would love if what you do in college, if you can do something like that in that kindergarten to begin to open a child to leadership from there, what would be done in that world, man?
Well, and that's my intention. That's what these programs, like this coaching program's about. It's to me, we talk about like financial investing. I'm not big in that world, so please don't contact me about financial advice, because I'm mostly not concerned with it. And but the we say, hey, invest early, right?
Yeah.
And then that compounds over time.
Yeah.
The same, I believe, is with leadership, and that's why I'm so focused on investing on all ages, right? I have
Yeah. Yeah.
clients from
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know age 20 to age 60, and I believe when we just modify the leadership trajectory of a young person,
Yeah.
that creates impact over time and creates
Oh yeah.
leadership capacity over time. So it is actually one of my missions that I'm very focused on, is to create an expanded leadership awareness at a younger age, because I think
Yeah.
that pays powerful dividends, not just to that individual, but to the impact that they create in their lives and through their lives. Um, so you were wondering though about what was it? What was it that set
Yeah.
me on a new
Yeah.
trajectory
What was that
after
disturbance to
fulfilling?
that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Navy kindly sent me as a professor to the University of Colorado. So I
Yeah.
returned to my alma mater while still active duty,
Yeah.
and I was the executive officer for the Naval ROTC unit here, which is how I got my commission in the Navy initially. So then I would like return to oversee
Yeah.
that leadership development program. But the other part of it is I was designated as an associate professor, and I was teaching these leadership classes that were designed for future Navy officers and designed for future Marine Corps officers,
Hmm.
but also this general student population were invited to sign up for those courses as well. So
Yeah.
typically, two-thirds of my students would be on a military track, and a third would be just students, and it was great. But this is what I discovered as a leadership professor. I
Yeah.
discovered how little I knew about leadership. I
Yeah.
discovered that the assumptions that I'd created about leadership um, were ready to be challenged. I yeah, became aware that the things that I felt were successes in my life as a designated leader in the Navy were far more complex
Hmm.
in how they arose, and far more dynamic. And I discovered some shortcomings in myself as a leader that deserves some reflection. So all in all, it was a reflective period, and
Yeah.
I discovered a love for joining those students as they discovered leadership for themselves in their own way. I really began it just felt really important to serve them in their development and their journey as they went on to do just really important things with their lives and through their lives. And so at the end of those 4 years, I was a professor, initially, like I was still in the military and a
Yeah.
professor. It was time for me to retire from the Navy after 23 years.
Yeah.
So there I was, Commander Morgan, on the eve of retirement. There is a standard path for somebody who looked like me, and it
Yeah.
often involved making a jump over to the airlines. A
Hmm.
lot of my squadron mates from over the years are in the airlines now, or it makes a jump over to defense contracting.
Yeah.
A lot of others are doing that. And I just felt this nudge from the universe. I had felt so much power in that exploration around leadership. I'm like, okay, I think what I am is a leadership development professional somehow. I don't know what that means,
Yeah.
but that's who I am. So I'm going to follow that nudge, much to the dismay of my wife and my family, because it seemed pretty largely impractical, but
Yeah.
they supported me. They supported me so much through it. And
Yeah.
so I put my I built a resume about being a leadership development professional, and then
Yeah.
just listened to crickets for the next 5 months, right? Because Nobody, nobody was buying that. I even circled back. Like I circled back on one job I'd applied for to the hiring manager.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I didn't even get an interview, so help me understand so I can be better in this process. And she explained, she said, look, this is a leadership development position and you were in the military. I'm like, yes, that's correct. And she said, okay, so there is no leadership in the military. People just do what they're told. So we didn't consider you. I'm like, oh,
Wow.
that's a really interesting way of
Wow.
framing my military
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
so because I felt like it had been a very powerful leadership journey, and
Yeah.
in some ways it had, and in some ways it was also incomplete. So eventually, this amazing healthcare company is a Fortune 200 with healthcare company took a chance on me, and they had this amazingly intentional culture, an amazingly unique culture, and it was very, very heart centric. It was very
Hmm.
emotionally forward, and it became quite clear to me very quickly that I had been neglecting my emotional self, and I've been neglecting my spiritual self for decades. Right?
Yeah.
I was pretty good at thinking and I was pretty good at doing.
Hmm.
Not at my dad's level, so we have to qualify that. But
Yeah.
I was a pretty
Yeah.
good thinker and a pretty good
Yeah.
doer. But emotionally and spiritually, I was neglected. And and doing the work as a leadership facilitator and as a developing coach and somebody designing these emotionally based programs um, challenged me because I wasn't there yet. I hadn't done that
Yeah.
work yet. And in many cases, I was holding space for a room full of people to do some pretty powerful work. And I was doing that. I was not only holding that space, I was doing the work with them. Right.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
programs, like for the first year or so, it was spitting me out the other side, just pretty mangled. Right. And that,
What did you
but
discover, Walt, when you were faced with that? Because
yeah,
uh, that is a serious awakening, awareness, if you will, to stand there and realize, wait a minute, I haven't done anything in that particular arena.
yeah,
Um, and then having it's like a father having children looking up to you as far as your students and stuff like that, and you're sitting there going, whoa, what did you discover, Walt? And I knew some of it always terrifies us. What tools did you
yes.
bring into your life to once you had that awareness that, wait a minute, emotionally I'm not there? What did you discover? What tools did you find yourself gravitating to assist you with the process of being engaged emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, so many, so many. One, I discovered an excitement, like a new excitement, like, oh,
Yeah,
here is an entirely undiscovered realm in my life, right?
yeah,
Which is myself and how I connect with the world and an
yeah,
awareness around that. So that would be the most basic tool is just to learn to listen to my body and
yeah,
understand and appreciate how I am moving through this world and connecting with this world and being in this world. That was an entirely
yeah,
new awareness and way that has obviously fundamentally changed my life and how I show up and how I
yeah,
experience life and heightened my joy and also connected me with my sorrows and shame and pain and anger too, all of it. But
yeah,
it's
all of it, yeah.
created for me a more complete and fuller life that I
Yeah,
just didn't have an awareness of before, not entirely.
yeah,
Um, and so that was one. And through that was also just this increasing sense of connection and awareness of the connectivity of all of it that was just not something that I was present to before. Like I can just feel and see and experience this just powerful connection of all things
Yeah.
That just hadn't, and I know that you know what I'm saying,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and you have been on that journey and discovered that and found that.
Yeah.
And there's so much beauty, but it's a uncertain time when you have to let go of
Yeah.
so many things that have served you and you've believed and brought you comfort.
Yeah.
And so it was an exciting time because of the newness of this. It was a terrifying time in which I challenged so many assumptions around my life. Um, and so did that answer your question, Ken? Did
Yeah.
I?
We become, and I think this is one of the most um, special position that we receive within our journey, and we become I call it the perpetual investigator of one's self, and we are actually engaged from an outsider looking in, and we begin to ask serious questions, and I think that's the space where we become so honest and pure with ourselves that we because we know who we are, so we can't BS ourselves, we can't lie about it, we have to be honest, and that position is until we die. And so
Mhm.
we search, how am I, why am I reacting this way, why is this coming up when this happened? And
Yeah.
so we began to delve into those things. And I'm sure, well, that some of those things with dad began to come up. How did you handle those when they showed up?
Mm. You're so wise, Ken. So, so as I kind of I went through so I would share that I went through a destructive phase
Yeah,
after my dad died that lasted for a while and involved a lot of drinking, some fast motorcycles, and some fighting as well, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
I did not handle that gracefully, and in some
Mhm.
ways, by the way, the Navy rewards and perpetuates all of that. So as I kind of moved from that pain into a
Yeah,
culture, like it, it's amazing what we can do in the United States Navy and get done,
yeah,
and it rewarded some of my vices for a while,
yeah.
until it could no longer reward them. So that was kind of the immediate phase after my dad died. Also, I would share that I watched my mom go through her bereavement with grace and power and beauty,
Yeah,
and I wasn't getting the lesson at the time.
yeah,
But I feel so grateful that she modeled that for me because now I understand the lesson. It took
yeah,
me, it took me a
yeah,
few decades to get
yeah,
there to truly appreciate the gift that was being offered from her around that. I just wasn't quite ready to receive, back to that
yeah.
topic of willingness. Um, and so then as I grew into adulthood, I became a little, I would say, critical of my dad,
Hmm.
um, in the sense that as I began to walk the path of fatherhood and adulthood and started looking at some of his decisions and choices, um, I'm like, yeah, that's there were some wonderful things there, but there were some bad things. There was
Yeah,
some what could be categorized as physical abuse. There was
yeah,
some addiction on his part. Like he
yeah,
had an open prescription from Valium that he was taking advantage of. It was the 70s. I think that he
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
alone in that, but there's a lot of
yeah,
that. And so I became more critical of him as a father while still acknowledging this like remarkable force of humanity that he was, and that he
yeah,
was this remarkable storyteller, really was able to connect beautifully with other people and allow them to feel heard and experienced.
yeah,
I was aware of that then. I'm more aware of that now. And then again, just his ability to create and in the physical world,
yeah,
and his confidence that if he could imagine it, then he could make it happen. So there's this like then this kind of tension emerging of,
Yeah.
okay, critical in many ways, but honoring in others. And I remember specifically where I was. I was walking back from campus to our home here in Boulder, and it's about 2 blocks from my house, and I don't know where it came from. This happened maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know where it came from, but suddenly out of nowhere, I just got just I would say walloped. Like I wasn't even thinking about my dad,
Yeah.
and I just got walloped with this moment of compassion
Yeah.
for him. He was an only child, right? He had been abandoned by his father
Yeah.
and raised by his mother, at a time when maybe there weren't as many single family homes,
Yeah.
or single parent homes. And he didn't have the benefit of an example of a father,
Yeah.
right? And here he was, born in the early 40s, growing up in a time where there's some very specific expectations around masculinity, and he had been in the
Yeah.
army, and so I'm like, oh my God, this was a man who was doing the best he could
Yeah.
for his family as a father. And so then I started having conversations with people who were um, dear to him and who loved
Yeah.
him the
Yeah.
most and understood him the most, and just started asking and hearing about my father from new perspectives. And
Yeah.
it was all driven from that just that profound moment of an unexpected moment of compassion that just rose within me.
Yeah. I think those moments, because I know I'm familiar with them, when they come, they present to expand one's perspective, to change, to shift you from where you are to where you need to be. And that is usually when that revelation comes, because I remember
Mm,
having that about my dad. There were a couple of main things when, with my father and I, because of our relationship also is challenged. And in my mind, my dad was this demigod. And I
mm,
remember when he got sick and he was in the hospital, and I came, they called me and I came and I saw him in the emergency room. And that was the first time, well, I saw my dad as a man. And I remember
mm,
that shifting and looking at my father and those memories of him. As a kid, I remember some of those harsh times, but I started remembering him and what he was doing for us, his kids. And I remember that watching my dad lay in his emergency room and all of this stuff coming to me. But it was a place where I saw him no longer as this demigod that was on this place that I could not reach. But when I saw him as a man, we began to have a relationship because I recognized that he is a man just like me. And it changed my entire life with my father. One visit in the emergency room that I just came to see to make sure he was all right, stuff like that. Did not know what was awaiting me, um, but it was a gift that was given to me because it changed our relationship and it changed my approach to him. I can now approach him as a man, and we
mm.
were able to connect at that level because I could never reach him up here. You know what I'm saying? I had him such this height. pedestal that I couldn't. And I find that most of my life at the time, I was trying to come up to that mountaintop, if you will, but when he came to where I was as a man, because I was a man and I wasn't this demigod, I saw myself as a broken man. And when I saw him in that space, it changed my life and it changed our relationship with each other. So I know what that means. So here you are when you had an opportunity to experience new insights, new revelation of dad, and you began to penetrate you, and you are again bringing in all of these different tools to uh, assist you, to help you to stand. How did you then relate to those around you in your close vicinity, such as your wife, your those that are close? Because those are the ones um, that can see some shifts, but because of they understand you closer, seeing all the
Hmm.
good and the bad times. And but when you have those profound movements, how did you start to engage with those close to you?
Yeah. So I have my wife and I have two children. They're currently 13 and 15, so I have two
Yeah,
teenagers. Um, my approach to parenting was very, very different than my father's approach, right? It's
yeah,
like I maybe rejected nearly everything and
likewise, yeah.
found my own way,
Yeah,
intentionally or not. So I'm trying to position this shift as something that was a gift to me
yeah,
as a father because I hadn't framed it that way before. And if it's a gift to me as a father, then it's a gift to my children,
yeah,
and to my wife and to my family. Um, and so I'm still exploring, I'm still processing this, but maybe the shift was to not just reject um, how I was raised,
yeah,
um, and fight against that, but to surrender to something that is more open, right? To
yeah,
to to have more choice and intentionality around parenting. Like I think I've always been a very engaged parent and a very engaged partnership with my wife as parents. Um, but I think maybe what I gained was a little more ability to give. If I could give my father compassion, that
yeah,
meant I could give myself compassion as a
yeah,
father and to really connect with my intentions as a parent and say, look,
yeah,
look, probably going to screw up our little guys a little bit, right? Like, but it's
yeah,
not going to be from a place of bad intention. It's going to be from a
yeah,
place of good intention. So let's
yeah,
lean into that with some faith
yeah,
that we're just all here trying to do the best we can. And that was
yeah,
probably an important, like, because up to that point, we had, tremendous control over how our children were being raised and how they were growing. But now they're
yeah,
teenagers, right? Now it's
yeah,
just
hmm,
like every moment's pretty much a flip of a coin about how
yeah,
much they're willing. I mean, we have some great children and they're
yeah,
amazing and they're teenagers, right?
yeah.
And so our influence is now to be available to them. It's a less
We're about
directive
spectators
engage.
now, man. We're about
Yeah.
spectatorship. And I understand that too. I had five boys, man, five
Okay.
boys. Well, so
Goodness gracious,
I
kid.
understand how
Yeah.
one shifts to a spectator in the sense where we are watching the audience because they all have to embark on their journey just like you and I did. And so And we still have to learn much lessons from them because I had to learn one that I entitled Compassionate Detachment that almost gave me a heart attack
Oh,
to learn. But
yeah.
it was very powerful. And as a parent, one of the most profound lessons that I had to embark on, and I had five of them to embark on it. So it was, I came out a little different from those things. But that's what they are going to. They're here to expand us. Well, they're going to expand you in
Yeah.
ways that you you're not aware of yet, but they're there for a purpose to make you even. We talk about that the enlightenment to enlighten us and to make us see all the greatness that is in us. So here you are.
Mhm.
You had an opportunity with the new perception with that. You are in this leadership class, and your um, your visitation has happened, and the changes has moved you. As you're standing in front of your students with the awareness of that encounter the newness of you, how do you now engage with these beings that are there and are coming to you for you to escort them with the questions through the questions that you are going to begin to ask as you are engaging with them? How did that begin to play out as you stood there now before these students that are there to gain insight as a leader, but also as an individual on this planet?
Yeah. So I think often, so I've been teaching at the university now for 12 years, and I
Yeah,
think often about Commander Morgan
yeah,
as myself as the early professor. And then that was certainly a presence. It actually, now that I think about it, my dad, my dad was a teacher and I actually was in his classes. It looked a lot like my dad, right?
yeah, yeah,
Directive, funny, accountable, unyielding, strong presence, right? That's
yeah,
very much who I was early on. And then I'd gone after I'd retired and I'd gone through kind of this emotional and spiritual journey, I came back to the classroom as a teacher, and
yeah,
it might have been a little bit too spacious for the
yeah,
students for where they were in their journey. So now speaking strictly not as a coach, but speaking strictly as in my role as an instructor at the university, um, I think I've found a blended place,
yeah,
right?
mm,
Of my of of threads, if you will,
yeah,
of many of my journeys woven together that allow me to show up in a way that provides both the structure that the students crave
yeah,
and the lack of structure that makes them uncomfortable, right?
yeah,
Like these things are happening simultaneously, but the spirit behind it is very much an offering. And
yeah,
that's the shift, right? I offer
yeah,
you this journey, I offer you this exploration, I offer you this community to explore, to read what others have said, to listen to what others have said about leadership, to explore yourself, what this means for you, who you are in this leadership journey, the impact that you would like to make as a leader as you visualize your future and with the openness that that can change over time as well. But it's only an offer now. And it's
yeah,
an offer that some of my students will accept wholeheartedly.
mm-hmm.
It's an offer that some of my students will accept half-heartedly, and
Yeah,
it's an offer that some will reject entirely, and
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah,
They still may get an A in my class even if they reject it entirely, right? It's
yeah,
okay. It's just a new ability as my capacity has increased to hold more. um, to be with more.
Yeah.
I'm able, I feel, to meet each of them wherever they are in that journey and to accept it
Yeah.
and to make offers and to have faith that it's enough.
Yeah. And here you are, Walt. Invite us to one of those. Um, I love those spaces because I really do think it is one of the most beautiful space to be. Because I told, and I've said this many times to folks, you can only experience this from a place of a servant. There is no other way by which one can experience when you are having a conversation with someone. And Walton, you're seeing from the conversation because you that have gone through, you know the type of question to ask that individual once you have located them to extract a shift within them. And one of those invite us to that conversation, well, because I love that shifting because when it happens, it is one of the most sacred things that only a servant gets to see and gets to be a part of. Invite us
Yeah.
to one of those sacred movements when you had an opportunity to speak with someone and began to move them from darkness in their perception into a newness that will create strength in them.
Yeah. I might move to the coaching a little bit to answer that question.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, because the coaching is the bulk of the work that I do. The classroom is, I describe it as a hobby. It's obviously more
yeah,
than a
yeah,
hobby. It's a calling, but
yeah,
it's a hobby also. It's what I do in my spare time.
yeah,
Um, but this thing that you've described shows up in coaching quite regularly.
yeah,
And so within me lives this integral methodology. And if you're a Ken Wilber guy, you
yeah.
understand something about integral theory. So
Mm-hmm.
integral coaching was born of the insights provided in integral theory, and some of your audience may be familiar with it as well.
Yeah,
Um, so after years of study and practice, this integral theory is something that lives within me, but it's so inclusive and inviting. So when I work with a client, it doesn't dictate, right? It
yeah,
emerges and surfaces and provides this
yeah,
foundation, this path, this way to support the client that is fully compassionate and fully supports them and doesn't tell them anything. It's very much an invitation. It's very much an offer.
yeah,
And so as that lives within me and I'm with a client, a coaching client, and I can feel that body connection. Like I can
yeah,
feel that warmth between my shoulders, and I can feel it,
yeah,
their warmth reaching out to me, even if it's over Zoom, whether it's
yeah,
live or remote, it doesn't matter. That connection, I'm feeling it with you right now, right?
yeah,
Like I can feel this connection in my chest, um, and then I'm also connected to something out. I'm connected to them, I'm connected to myself, and I'm connected to something outside myself. And I
yeah,
don't know how else
yeah,
to explain it.
yeah,
But they will be sharing something. And then from out there, artists say, no, I didn't write that. I didn't draw that. I didn't sculpt that. It just came to me. It already
yeah.
existed and it just
Mm-hmm.
moved through me.
Yeah,
So coaching can be like that, is often like that for me, where something in the universe will drop in my lap and say, this is the inquiry right now.
yeah,
This is the place to be curious. This is the question to ask.
yeah,
Um, and then I'll allow that to move through me and I'll ask. And so this is the moment that you're talking about.
yeah,
It's when their face goes slack.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
when the jaw drop. It's when the jaw drops.
Yeah.
And then there's the silence as they're processing something entirely new
Hmm.
that will move them along their journey of growth as a human, as a leader,
Yeah.
as a person important to the people in their lives, as a productive citizen of all these things. This one question that visited us from the
Yeah.
universe,
Yeah.
that I became the instrument,
Yeah.
moved through the integral theory that
Hmm.
lives in me and my years of study and my years
Yeah.
of experience and existence and lessons hard learned. Like I am the
Yeah.
conduit for the universe and for this question that I can just offer.
Yeah.
And that is the next step, the next powerful step in their journey. And there'll be more, there'll be many more,
Yes. Yeah.
but one or two of those will show up in every session,
Yeah. And those are
and
holy moments, man. It is, I consider them uh, like that because it is so profound in its the energy that is there. Um, all of the years of pain that that individual has been in, you see it as you said, the face, the muscle drops. You see all of that transition taking place and the release happening, and then the next thing you know, some I've seen people walk, some people cry, some people laugh, some people because it is an emotional. I tell people trauma is a stored emotion within oneself, and when we discover and release it, how we express ourselves at that time can range from all kinds of stuff. It is a personal, precious moment that one can walk through and get a chance to bask in something so valuable and honorable between two human beings that are on the path of interconnection. There's nothing like it while you're
yeah.
living here. It's a holy time. So here you are in this space, well, and you're able to guide. And I always say to people, make sure that your guide or your coach, and I like that guide
Mhm.
because the guide is one that doesn't impose anything, allows themselves to be guided by you, by what you're saying, and is able to guide you from what you're saying. And so I look at them as a guide that is within this dance of words and emotions and all of those things. And I have a guide, and I always like to say to people, find a guide that knows how to move through, that have been through some things, that have been tested, that has been proven, and that has walked out. They're a little burnt, if you will, because they've been through some fire. They are a little different, and you can sense them once you are in their presence because they emerge with something special. And
Mhm.
that, what they have come out with special, is what you need to bring you from where you're at to where you ought to be. And that, I tell people, we call it in Christianity the anointing, that force that is able to shatter all of those misconceptions of who you are, that wisdom, that knowledge, that insight, that all of it we have, that I have someone, Walt encompasses all of that. And I want to encourage you to get into his space, to become acquainted with him because he can guide you through those hard dark times that you believe there is no way out, I have a guide for you guys. Walt, this has been precious stuff, man. Precious. Our conversation, our interaction has been precious. And I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Yeah, no, it has been such a joy, a pleasure to be connected with you in this conversation today. And I'm so grateful for what you brought out in me in this conversation. So thank you, Ken.
It's an honor, sir. It's been an honor.